Hey, welcome to the process. My name is Dr. John Bush. This is my journey research doing targets per game, targeting rate, etc. This is the last big project that I'm going to uh, upload and talk about. I'll have other things out there. It's 15th of August. I got secret research that was inspired actually by this research. I don't know if I'll release it or not. Not many of you listening, but thank you for those that do. This is for the science of football. Hate allergies. Man, I'll get my voice back here. Okay, hopefully my allergy fit's done here. Anyway, uh, gonna have some other research. Maybe next year I'll release it. Got to see what's going on. But anyway, there is at the end of this journey some really, uh, I think, usable data. We call it actionable data, and certainly changed my thinking somewhat on some players and teams and things. And we'll go over that. Okay. And I'll have the static images on the ScienceFantasyFootball.com website so you can find the articles on this. First thing, 2013, 2022. Looking at different positions, overall league targets, I think it's important to kind of understand, especially in PPR, exactly, where is the targets and whatnot. Again, these are all running backs, all tight ends, all wide receivers. And it is clear that wide receivers are the show, right? They're 10 out of about 17. So whatever that is, 10 out of 17. So 6, 6 is, yeah, 50 something, 60, close, by, we'll ballpark it at 60. The other two, roughly actually about the same. People may or may not wonder, but running backs and tight ends about the same. If you look at total targets over the, was it 9 year, 2013 to 22? Last year, running backs were one of the lowest we've seen. So just be aware, we might get a bounce, an uptick. It's always good to understand where things have been. People only use last year as, a line in the sand, and that line is not really a line. Okay, it's very squishy. And 2017 was the highlight. 2020 COVID was the low. So that's kind of about 400 target difference here from the highs to the lows. And tight ends, 2018 the low, 2000 was it 16 the high, a little bit less than 400 targets difference. So there's going to be, you know, probably plus or minus 400 targets in variance. That can be a lot actually, depending on teams and players. So, if it was all static, then we would, know exactly who and what to draft, right? Wide receivers, 2017 was the low. 2020, yeah, was the high. No, 2021 was the high. So again, about, what is that? About 1,000 targets, right? Yeah, 1,000. So right away, a lot more variation in wide receivers. I plotted it. You can see the high, then a drop, then we kind of come back 2021 and drop last year. Last couple of years hasn't been too bad, and it's a little hard to tell the highs and the lows here since they're very close together with running backs. Uh, Proportionally, if you take all those numbers and sum them up and then divide the distribution, 60% 2020 is about right. So it's pretty steady that way. So, you know, less variation in that, which was interesting. And this is targeting rates. Targeting rates were a lot closer if you look at the years here. Uh, in the last few years, it's been kind of flat for some of these, certainly for wide receivers, uh, tight ends, and running backs here as far as targeting rates here. So you can see 2014 was a hell of a year. Look at look at the gaps there. Look at 2017. Tight ends and wide receivers had dropped so much they were very close together. Very, I'm sorry, running backs and wide receivers are very close together. So that was probably a great year to have pass catching running backs there. So I got tricked. 2015 was the year of the zero RB, and there that is the lowest targeting rate. So when you think about what system of drafting and whatnot works, do you ever get a little deeper to figure, well, why did it work? Well, it was just that time of year. There was injuries and things, and you can spot the data. And last year was really low. So you may have seen the same kind of thing happening. So just be aware there's a lot of variation, and people make pronouncements about things, but when I see the variation, uh, you know, it's variation means that the strength of your beliefs should be as strong as you think they are. You're probably over optimistic about a lot of players, and that can trick. Not saying don't draft them, but just don't have it in you. Well, how come this person? Variation plays a role. Okay, just the way the game goes. There's a lot of other It's a system. And when you look at a system and understanding all these inputs and outputs, there's a lot of variation that can occur. Okay, chaotic variation can occur. So, it's the flapping of the wings of butterfly causes a hurricane concept, chaos theory, if you want to get into it. I'm sure I used to know, but uh, physics is way beyond me now. Okay, so let's continue. How we doing? Oh, we got. Okay. So I then asked the question about total teams and looked at 2022. I sorted. So you see 2013 to 2022. And I sorted teams that were high in targets per game. So they were really hot and heavy on delivering the PPR targets here. These were the highs in green. These were the lows. So people are making some and doing and drafting based on, I guess, changes. Look at Atlanta. Drake London. Atlanta was one of the lowest last year. Chicago, I know people thinking Fields. I mean, not saying it won't happen, but just be aware. A lot of variation. Look at Chicago. This is the standard deviation. Look at the amount of variation Chicago's seen. And last year was really the worst year Chicago's seen for targets per game. So look at some of the players that are on some of these teams in here versus some of these here. So you might find some bargains here if teams will continue high versus low levels. I don't know about the mid group here, but have an opportunity to take a look at this. So this kind of makes me think, okay, I might get a little deeper in the depth chart here, like I'm doing KJ Osborne right here in Minnesota. I'm not scared of Godwin and Evans in Tampa Bay. Pittman, I'm. It's not like I'm seeking these people before their price. Obviously, we all want a price, but I'm not so scared either, right? If you look at some of these plays here, Cincinnati makes sense. The Raiders, the Jets. So check that out. So Rodgers is going in. Rodgers has been in the area where running backs were more useful, and he was passing less. Curious to see how that meshes. That's going to be a big change there. So I don't know if it's good or bad. But you can look at the overall 9 years averages here and, kind of see what's what, where's where on that. Uh, Here is targets per game. If you look at the complete year, and again, 50% of the population of the league is in the box. The upper 25 is here. The lower quadrant is down there. So 2013 was quite amazing. We haven't ever seen a year like that. So much difference. Here we are last year. Look at the low. So there was some strange things happening in targets last year. Okay, so if people are thinking 2022 is, the standard, just be aware if you look at the trend, it been kind of decreasing a little bit. And, it's not something that can be predictable or steady there. So I like to use the box and whisker just for me to see and consider what happened last year. In other words, are we going to get a year like that where there was closer amount of targets per game in here? But if you look overall at the floor and the ceiling, look at the ceiling, look at the floor, look at the distance. The distance here. But the floor, the bottom, just it's like there were some teams that really, and I think we saw some of Atlanta, Chicago, really. So in fact, look at the year. There hasn't been such a year that was so bad for the bottom 25% of the league. I hadn't heard anybody talking about that. Y'all heard anybody talking about that? People ignore that. If that is what we get in 2023, there's going to be a lot of disappointment going on here, folks. Could be in some of these teams. So look at some of these teams and think about the wide receivers and the pass catching running backs and be aware. Could be a big surprise. Don't think people were expecting this, drop like we saw last year. And look at the ceiling. That was one of the worst ceilings. In fact, the worst ceiling we've seen. in 9 years and the worst floor. 2022 was not average. It was downright poor. So if you're looking back, you could be tricked and fooled by that. And I just want you to know that it is not business as usual, regardless of what the squawk boxes are pitter pattering about on Twitter, folks. Come on. I hope you're not paying money for all that. Okay. You know, this should make you more pessimistic and cautious. And that's not a bad thing in fantasy. People shoot from the hip, they're too optimistic, and they get burned, and they look around every year. How'd that happen? Well, you're not paying attention to trends and top-down research. You've probably never even heard of it. In fact, people need to be listening here or not. Okay, that's fine. If you want to be entertained and you want to blow your money, great. Hopefully you're in a lot of leagues that I am. I will enjoy taking your money. You want to be entertained? I'll be entertained counting your money at the end in January and got that check. That'll be my entertainment. Okay. So you need to decide how you want to, do it here. If you want to set fire to your bankroll, then that's fine. If you're mad at your money, then don't listen to me. Just turn me off now. Okay. I think what I did was some stats here. I'll continue. So if you've listened to me before, I use statistical methods. Okay, I showed you this. Something really unsavory was happening in 2022 with targets per game. We had some really sad teams. Is that real? Do we really believe that can happen again? Is that predictive? Is it sticky? What is that? How do we figure that out? So the test, the question, is team targets per game average last year predictive of this year? There's the question. This is science, folks. There's a question. Now let's test it. I sort each year's target per game, so from 2022, and I divided the league top 10, mid 11, bottom 11 teams by targets per game, and then followed what did those teams do next year as far as their average, and placed them into high, mid, and bottom categories. I used the ANOVA, analysis of variance, testing of those treatment groups. In other words, last year's high, mid, and bottom, and I did that for the last 9 years. I tested the aggregates over 9 years, folks. Not 1 year test, 9 years worth of data to test. Okay? You're saying nobody does that. Hey, can't help that. You pay money not to have some statistical testing of some of these things that a lot of gun flapping, funny noises and little puppets and crap. Dr. Bush ain't into that. Like I said, I'm gonna entertain when I collect your jack at the end of the year. There's my entertainment. Anyway, I test that. So there's plenty of calculators out there. Here's a ANOVA calculator and a Tukey testing that will test the different groups. So in this, the treatment is high, mid, and low last year. What did they do the next year? Targets per game. I put that down. I hit calculate. What did we get? Oh, what did we get? We got that those teams from last year tended in the preceding year to give us 2.9672 targets per game. The mid teams gave us 2.9, so pretty much the same. The bottom, 2.7. There's a little bit of suggestiveness here. 8% less from there to there. 8% less per game. So 10%. So if a team's throwing out, I don't know, 20, 30 targets, that means that the higher teams are spitting out 3 or more targets more than the low teams. Saying, well, that doesn't mean anything. How many games head to head have been decided in your history by 3 points in PPR? You think about that. Where do you want to be? I want to be over here. So we got a suggestiveness. Something may be going down. We ask the question, is there a difference in those 3 treatment groups? The answer is yes. The ANOVA there's a F statistic, they call it. The probability that there isn't any difference in the treatment groups is basically 0, right? 0, 0, 0, 2. Yeah. So any kind of randomness is thrown out. The chance of this is less than 5% chance. So we ignore that in science, saying, no, this is real, folks. 8% is real. That gives us a little bit of advantage. So what groups are different or not? We use the post hoc Tukey test. Honest significant difference between it's called the facilitate pairwise comparisons within your ANOVA treatment groups. F says there's a difference. The Tukey honest significant difference tells you which pairs are different. And so you could probably predict which treatments are different. I would say the high is different than the low. Maybe the mid is different than the low. Let's find out. And treatment 1 again was high, mid, and low. And treatment, the high and the mid, no difference. Okay, no difference. The high and the low, yes, difference here. For that to be random is 0.0002. So it's different. The mid versus low is different as well. So now we know it's 6%. So somewhere between 8 to 6%. So now it tells us, this data says we need to focus on the teams that were low last year. And I showed you. Okay, there's some significant teams in that low list last year that people have high expectations about. I'm warning you now, it may not be what you think. Okay? You're saying, well, whatever. At the end of the year, well, Atlanta did better. Oh, that's the thing. I'm going down the layer. I'm not to the point where I can, say, I'll bet this. What I would do is bet in this group will be lower than that group of teams. That is the bet. Okay. Can't get that bet in Vegas. Hey, I can't help that. That's what I'm confident about. So let's take a look. Last year's high, mid, and here is the issues right here, folks. The low teams are 8 to 6% lower in targets per game. Okay. Doesn't tell us what positions, right? Is there a problem in running back on these teams, tight ends, wide receivers, or a combination? But it invites us to test the positions. Okay. Guess what? I'll have that data for you in the following lessons. I'm going to get to that. We're going to dig that up a little bit. But you should know now. Don't be surprised if many of those teams in the low have issues and are lower than people think this year, and you're going to get all fired up. Not saying that there's not going to be good players on there. No. Not saying they're not going to be bar. Remember, it's all about price too. So if I can get a great player that might lead the team, even though the team is not really the best, they can make enough that if I get enough price draft capital, hey, I made a good deal. I got more than I bargained for. So that's another part of this. You have to include that in the, but your data has to take you there. Because right now you didn't know, okay? Nobody's talking about this on Twitter. Saying, well, why don't I say it? I will advertise the article. I don't have time to, and that's just not my personality. Toot my own damn horn. And, why? What good does that do? I'm showing you my process. This is what I like to do. This is my entertainment. Finding these little fun things out. You want to know what entertains me? This. Yes, I'm a data nerd. I can data, and now that makes it fun for me, not to flap my chops at some clown on Twitter. I ain't got, Professor ain't got time for that business. Okay, ain't nobody got time for that. And this is extra secret data here, my data box and whisker for those treatment groups. So here are last year's high, mid, and low. And sure enough, the low teams, the ceiling, but look at the floor, row, and look at the overall average is way below about 75% of the high and mid. So you're paying right in there. So here's the issue right there. It's grabbing a lot of players from these teams that are going to be in this range. Notice there's some teams going to be up here, right? 4 of them, maybe. Let's see how many. 11. So what is that? A quarter of 11. So 25%. So 2, 3, maybe 3, 4 of these teams might be in the upper 3. I don't know. Could be Atlanta, could be in the top. In other words, it's the thing. We don't know that. All I'm warning you about is be extra cautious here and a little bit more looser here on your draft capital. That's all I think that we can take home, right? Okay, just to let you know, there's going to be a few that are going to do okay, but there's going to be some sadness as well. Okay, as a group, these are 8% below these guys, 6% below these are game. Okay, I'm back. We're having fun.